for start. So because of that, I'm going to say boom again just to make sure that we have it. Great to see everybody in the comments there who got in there a little bit early, a couple of minutes ago. Hope you are there now. But yes, welcome to Tokyo Tonight too. My name is Hiko Simon. I'm here every Sunday night at 10:40 p.m. I was actually pretty well organised tonight until I fell asleep a little bit earlier, but that's right, I'm ended up scrambling a little bit as usual, but still, it's good to see you all. I do actually have quite a few topics. I didn't really think that I did, but I will try to zip through them. Remember, as always, I have one eye here on the chat, which means that if you @mark me, @mark Hiko Simon in the chat, it will flash like a highlight in orange to me, and I will be able to see and respond, which is what I'd certainly like to do. So please remember, if you'd like there's a topic you'd like me to dive down in on, I would certainly like to do that. Let me quickly see if I can enlarge the fonts here, which I've just done, and that looks a lot better. So yes, good to see everybody. I know good morning for a lot of you, good afternoon for some of you, good late at night for people like Andrea Moboya in Australia, of course. So been a bit busy last week of school term, so yes indeed, I know it's very late for you, so have a good weekend, Andrea. Thanks for stopping by. We've got starchy pancakes, first time able to catch a show from Tokyo, so congratulations on that, and very good to have you join. We've also got Believe in Yourself. Welcome. We've got Tokyo 503. Yesterday was a washout in Tokyo, but today was nice. Was it a washout? I guess it was. It was a little bit rainy, and it is rainy season. That's kind of what you get. We've got James Kelly. Good to see you. And hi, BIY. Is that hi bye? I don't know what that is. Quint Rankin. Good to see you. Thank you for all the topics, by the way. Yeah, that's going to be one of the first topics about how we did get through Japan Business Time in record speed. But we have some more ideas, which I will also share with you. We have people booming, I see now. We have James Kelly boom, Quint Rankin boom, Tokyo 503 boom, boom right back at you, boom, we are about to start. I'll do another boom at the end of the comments, because I did notice on some of the recordings lately that the boom is missing, and I think it's very important to start with the boom. We've got Sergeant Bilko, good morning to you, and good to have you along. Dan H, did I watch the cricket yesterday? Because New Zealand, we were so lucky to win at the end against the West Indies. I don't have a means of following the games, although I did see the highlights on the ICC YouTube channel, and yes indeed, for those not familiar with cricket, the equivalent of a home run, you get 6 points. If it bounces and it hits the fence of the field, you get 4 runs. Other than that, you just run by running to the other end of the, basically like a base run, is like one point. And indeed, the very last, was it the last bowlers? That was crazy that the West Indies basically had like 4 runs to win, and they hit a 6, and it would have been a 6 except that catch off balance right beside the fence, like stopping it, becoming a 6-pointer, or a 6-run. Yes, that was pretty amazing. I saw that, and there have been so many incidents over the years of people like standing on the boundary rope, like catching that, and it turns out it's not a valid catch, and that point at 6. I remember an incident where one was caught, and the guy was it was an Australian who caught a New Zealand catch on the boundary rope, and it was given out, although he was standing on the rope. That was a long time ago, but that's right, that was a miracle finish. So it looks like there have been some great games, and what I particularly enjoy just following, as someone who likes cricket but really hasn't had a chance to follow it properly in many years, what I really appreciate is to see the up-and-coming countries. It's really good to see Afghanistan playing and being pretty competitive. They played really well against India. For a country that, for pretty much all of my childhood, like South Africa when I was growing up, my parents' generation used to talk about South Africa all the time. But I didn't really get to see a South African rugby team play until the mid-90s. And indeed, they've turned out to be one of our New Zealand's greatest rivals. And same with Afghanistan, war and everything else for so many years. And, you talk about a place that you just associate with just, violence and war and backwardness. And it's awesome to see that they can produce a cricket team that, is hopefully going to be as competitive as the neighbouring countries of Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan and India, which, all have fantastic cricket teams. So it's wonderful to see different teams, including teams that I'm not familiar with, and the degree of competition. But yes, indeed, it'll be getting interesting soon, and I probably will, just because the games look pretty good. It'll be interesting to see how that develops. So yes, indeed, Dan H, I did catch that. We've got people coming in and saying hello to each other. I believe Kang and Kodos. Good to see you, Kang and Kodos. Believe in yourself. Facebook still refuses to acknowledge your existence. Well, sorry about that. But was it 5 to win, 4 runs to draw? Well, there we go. But it was still amazing, wasn't it? Yes, King and Kodos. I'm sorry. I've had a busy time lately, and I've worked on it. In fact, yeah, I'll try to make it a goal. Except, so one thing I was going to fix before the show was I'd set up with this sort of air catch that I could do mixing on the fly like this wirelessly. But then I realized that it won't work even if I plug in the sound. Like the whole thing falls apart if I plug in sound. So I haven't been able to set up. I'll go back to my old audio setup if I want to show you guys me working on IK oscillator, and I was planning to do that tonight, except I fell asleep. So it's coming along, Kang and Kodos, and I apologize. I haven't done anything with it since we talked last, but I will try to do that anyway. But yes. Anyway, so cricket has been excellent. I'd say let's get into the topics and see where we go. If we go early, I would like to try to get to some music. But yes, promises. Indeed, it is always hard when you said something like this. Life just gets busy sometimes. I've been well, yes, not getting to making excuses, but it's just been particularly busy lately. All around of which I've still found some time to do a couple of things, which I'll share with you now. First of which is, by the way, you'll notice that the believe in yourself. You can relate to falling asleep, beginning to wonder if you'll ever fall asleep on a bed again. Yeah. No, I was guilty of lying down a little bit when my son went to bed tonight, and I thought I'd just quickly sit down comfortably for a moment, and I didn't get up again. But yes, so boom. Welcome to the main part of the show. So the first thing is, of course, we finished up. I did mention the problems that I had, the dramas and tribulations I had with the editing of the latest series of Japan Business Time. You've probably now heard for yourself how the final 2 episodes, I did caption them. But one of them was a Japanese promotion, this one of actually an event which I attended on Friday as a speaker for which is basically promoting Rochelle's book, Gaikokujin Tono Hatarakikata, a manga-based version, guide for Japanese people to working with foreign people. And actually had a really, really fun time. Now that whole event, by the way, which I attended, it was live streamed. The video is still up there. It's like 2 hours long. However, I have already been able, the people who live streamed it gave me the file, and I'm thinking about actually cutting this up into little episodes and perhaps captioning some of it. It's 2 hours, and remember, every minute takes about 10 minutes to caption. So 2 hours, that's a lot of captioning time, but I would like to take, I've got my own talk in there. I've got a 20-minute talk that I give, as well as it's a panel talk, and the sections by Rochelle and Chomado-san, the other author of the book, are really great. It was a lot of fun. It's all in Japanese, of course, but if you understand Japanese, it was a really, really good event. There were also some amazing people. There was this person, I tweeted the images of this person who basically, Chomado-san, the author, asked everybody sort of present. She had a lot of sort of internet fans of her manga, and she asked the people present to sort of live tweet the event. For people who couldn't attend, it was this is the third one of these events. In the first event, there were like 100 spaces and 600 people applied. It was all by lottery. This time it was something like 350 applicants for 150 places, so it was better, but it was still way oversubscribed. So for the people who couldn't show up, she asked people to live tweet it. And it was I experienced the force of this person's popularity, because my Twitter was exploding. Like when someone mentioned my name, it was like all the notifications went nuts on my Twitter. Among the people that were live tweeting, I don't know how much of a like this that is necessarily. That's supposed to be me. Probably the deep cheek shadow lines. It looks a little bit like a handlebar mustache. Hey, maybe that'll be the next thing I do. But yes, there were the people who live tweeted it. There were people who discussed the points that I was making, and it was actually really cool. This person drew little manga, little cartoons, captions of each one of those. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And like I said, I think so already I've got a 2-hour video, which is I've already trimmed actually. I'm just going to make some titles and just figure out how we want to post it. It makes sense that this was actually the owner of the event, Chomano-san and Rochelle Cobb. Perhaps I'll put it on there, but there again, I mean, the ones of my own section I would love to put up on this channel, and it would be a nice way perhaps if we put the series on one of our channels and everyone sort of point to it. It's a nice way to sort of share each other's content. So that's probably coming up. Certainly with this one, I'd like to ask you guys, as you might remember, yeah, this is the first. So this is the first series that I've ever, just because it ended up because of the editing problems with it, because of the sound problems. It was only ready like 2 weeks before this event, which I wanted to promote on like episode 7 of the series. So I realized the only way I was going to get it out ahead of the event, and any way to be able to promote it, was to post every day, which I did. So what did you guys think of that? Do you prefer if I draw these out and make this like a series once a week and make it nice like that and let it go for a time? Certainly as a creator, it means I feel like I've got some extra content that I can have posting for a while. Did you guys like that? Do you guys prefer I did it the Netflix style, where it was more sort of compressed and you could see little daily shows? I did notice there seemed to be pretty good interaction on the videos this time. Or yes, do you think it's better with the drawn out thing? Do you prefer the compressed release? Or yeah, obviously if it's a compressed release, it means that I'm only going to be able to put these out every few months or so. It's always, from my perspective, it's always nicer if I can like draw out and fill the gaps. There again, when I was doing things like I was setting up live video premieres of episodes that were like 5 or 6 weeks out, I noticed some people getting annoyed by that. They didn't like seeing that there was a video that was already available now that I wasn't going to share for 6 months. But Tokyo 503, or not 6 months, for 6 weeks. Drawn out is better. Yeah, I must admit, it is nice to have sort of content, I think, spread out and give something more to the channel. Well, it's interesting that the consensus is drawn out. It surprised me. I got better. I was worried that I was going to lose a lot of interaction, or people would miss things if I put things out too quickly, and it felt like people seemed to be noticing them more. But okay, there seems to be starchy pancakes as a binge watcher, which I guess is what we've all been driven towards, but I appreciate the feedback, and that's good because that's in line with what I would probably do by default, but it is always nice to validate that, especially so I thought maybe this is a that's right, delayed gratification can still serve you well. Very mature responses here. It's I think it's a sign of the quality of the audience that people are happy to wait. So anyway, that was a lot of fun, and you can see the whole live stream, but what I would suggest is wait, because I'll edit these up in a more packaged, like rather than a whole 2 hours of sitting down watching and falling asleep, and we'll pack it down, I think, into like 5 to 10 minute episodes. I've already figured out it'll probably be like 10 or 12. You probably actually, and the content is amazing. It actually is. It is Japan business time on steroids. It's obviously Japanese focused, which I really like. So look out for that. We're probably going to do a manga de wakaru gaikokujin to no hatarakikata video series, and it's going to be awesome. So that'll be pretty cool. So look out for that. And now news topics, which I was planning to be a little bit more organized, except stuff happens. So the first thing, Kenyan Kodos, you're getting used to falling asleep to my voice. I'm sorry about that. Well, I know especially in Australia, people are watching it late. But it's very soothing. I'm glad that you find it soothing. Anyway, I'll take the ASMR views. I'll take them any way I can get them. So yes, Japan to allow former surname on passport. To tell you the truth, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with this. It's been a big thing for a while that we've covered on here before. How the Japanese koseki law doesn't allow Japanese people to maintain their maiden names, particularly. And by the way, there is a misconception that it's something aimed at women, treating women like possessions, that they join the male koseki and they become the possession of the man, and they're not allowed to use legally their pre-marriage name. They're not allowed to use hyphenated names. They're not allowed to sort of to erase that, which is a huge inconvenience. While it's true, of course, in the majority of cases in Japan, as in the West, that it is the male spouse's name that often is the one that is taken. Of course, if you marry a foreigner doesn't have a koseki, so actually the name doesn't change by default because the Japanese family law system doesn't have a way to account for foreigners, even still. The other aspect of this is that it's actually traditionally it was less to do with the woman becoming the man's possession, and it was more about the higher socially ranked koseki. So if you were like a middle class guy and marrying a high class girl, if you were like a Billy Joel, doing the uptown girl type thing in the Edo period, Billy Joel would be giving up the surname. It was always to perpetuate the koseki, the family register of the higher ranked family. And maybe based on that culture, there's a little bit more gender neutrality in spite of all the, of course, issues with gender equality in Japan that admittedly do exist. Two things that I've always appreciated. One, son. Son is just, why do we say Mrs., Miss? I noticed Justin on Facebook the other day put up the same sort of topic, how with when you're in the West, we've got all these delineations for whether a woman is married or unmarried or divorced or whatever, and it's funny, you can not know how to name people, and it comes to a head when you have a name like Megumi, for example, which can be a name for a male or a female, and you see Megumi Tanaka, and you don't know whether this person is male or female, and you see it, Tanaka Megumi-san, and you go to translate it on an email or something, and you can't translate it into English unless you know what their gender is, and you get stuck. In Japanese, you don't need to know what the gender is linguistically, and also, and I do know, maybe not a lot of cases, but I certainly know a number of cases where the men who have married have taken their wife's surnames. It doesn't seem to be quite as unusual here. That said, the idea of being able to keep separate surnames has been very controversial, and some Japanese conservative politicians have said it's against family values, which is just stupid. So there seems to be a concession on that in this case anyway, where Japan is to allow people who want to show their, in parentheses, to show their maiden names on their passports even after the names update, which is it's a baby step, but it's an interesting step in that debate. Another thing, again, laws being raised to foster positive working environments for foreigners, again trying to prepare Japan to accept more foreign labor. And by the way, it is interesting, I've mentioned this before, how they've really focused on foreign labor, not foreign immigration. And this is a line that Abe himself draws. Although they are preparing societies and workplaces to have non-Japanese residents and workers, they're emphasizing that the intention of the system is still not to have these people come and become Japanese or change the society. It's for them to come and work for a time in Japan and leave, and then be replaced by new people who want to come to Japan, which I'm not sure is, of course, is the correct way still to handle this, but nonetheless, in the way that Japan does, it's being very systematic about trying to figure things out. I remember scoffing and laughing when Japan said it was going to become a tourist, it was going to have 10 million tourists a year, and that was an absolute joke to me. Japan's, just didn't do tourism, it did domestic tourism by Japanese people, and it did tourism of Japanese people going to other countries, but there was just no framework in Japan, even 20 years ago, for foreigners coming to Japan. And that was what made coming to Japan fun, was that it was a little bit, difficult and awkward to do as a foreigner. But the idea that Japan could ever be tourist friendly for foreigners was ridiculous. It was laughable when Koizumi set that goal. Now Japan has 30 million tourists a year and is heading for 40 million tourists a year. So Japan is capable of doing these things, and it's amazing how they just plug away and they do a good job on this sort of thing. So even on this, I am very optimistic about this. And within this, again, the legislation which they're talking about here, which is made it a requirement for businesses to make an effort to provide foreign employees with opportunities to learn the language, also commits local and national authorities to promoting Japanese education. So it's still soft, and this is partly where I guess they're going to be figuring out the best ways to do this. Yes, in light of the other situations, including of universities, for example, that just haven't tracked or looked after or done it. Well, there have been certainly two situations like that have come to a head around education, where just to highlight the blind spot that Japan has for looking after foreigners. The first is that non-Japanese are not required they're not subject to the education law, the scope of mandatory education. Japan is unique in the OECD that the education law making education mandatory for kids up until the end of junior high school only applies to Japanese citizens, which means that you have these communities. It's the lesson of the Brazilian education where people assumed if people had Japanese DNA that they would just magically be able to fit in Japan. And what happened in a lot of these Brazilian communities was the schools didn't have any way to teach these immigrant Brazilian Japanese people Japanese. And these people struggled with school, and combined with the fact that school attendance was not mandatory for the Brazilians, you had a generation of people who basically sort of dropped out of school before the legal age that that a Japanese could drop out, and all the social problems associated with having communities that were just basically sidelined around this. So you have that situation. Of course, now you have these other situations which of universities that have allowed and sponsored students to have educational visas, and they've disappeared. That school that lost 1,600 people recently. So yes, putting more of an onus on institutions to make sure that they are providing for, without necessarily being too coercive yet. It's baby steps, but yeah, we'll see. Tokyo 503, Kyoto residents complaining about too many foreign tourists. Isn't that a bit arrogant? Hey, Mulberry Pie, good to see you. Yes, it's a little bit. Well, Kyoto is arrogant. That's the first thing. Any conversation about Kyoto begins with. I mean, seriously, they could be talking about. It's hard to come across a conversation about Kyoto. I mean, there are wonderful. Kyoto is wonderful, and there are many wonderful things about Kyoto. But yes, it's got a culture of pretty harsh discrimination, even against Japanese people, like not from Kyoto, let alone too many foreign tourists. That said, from all accounts, there are too many foreign tourists in Kyoto. The city's infrastructure, it's been too successful. It's literally straining public transport. People can't catch. People are complaining when they say that there are too many foreign tourists. The thing about Kyoto is that the tourist sites, the famous shrines and sites, are in the middle of what is otherwise a very big and very highly populated city. So what's happened is all the foreign tourists that are trying to get from point A to B, from Shrine A to Garden B to Restaurant C to Gion to see Geisha, whatever, the people are traveling around using the public transport are causing queues for the buses that regular local residents trying to get a bus to work can't get it or have to wait 3 or 4 buses to go, and it's making them late. It's basically overwhelming the local infrastructure, which again implies if all these people are coming in, Kyoto has to sort of figure out how to accommodate this better. But by all accounts, certainly when it gets crowded, you can't even move around. But yes, indeed, Mr. Cordy Chap, good to see you. And when Kyoto people complaining, well, and this is, remember, from a town that has conventional sort of rules, unwritten rules, that you need to be like 4th or 5th generation Kyoto to be able to rent an apartment within the inner loop, geographic area. So they literally have like a weird kind of apartheid among Japanese people based on how many generations have lived in Kyoto to begin with. So yes, indeed, you have all of that weird stuff. This was just funny. Somebody was seen walking down the street with a gun in a holster and a belt, and apparently 30 police were called out and rushed the person who was walking around with the gun. It turned out it was a realistic replica air gun, and he said that he was wearing it for fashion purposes. Apparently in Kobe right now, it is fashionable to wear a gun and walk around. It is a funny thing. I've never really sort of gotten this in Japan, although guns are of course illegal. So I guess this is a thing. And we had this when I don't know if any of you have ever seen the Leo Bangs series that I did with Brian Walters and Betamax DC years and years ago. But it was sort of this guy who was sort of doing film school, and he had written a screenplay, and he wanted to sort of do a kind of a YouTube version of creating this, and it was a lot of fun to be in it for a little bit, part of it, like a spy action drama. And he wanted to it was all very low budget and very, very sort of thrown together, but for one of the scenes he had a replica gun, and I can remember at the time some people, including Tokyo Kuni, were saying, dude, you're like walking around in Yogi Coin with a completely unmasked replica gun. It looks like a real gun, and you're walking around shooting this thing, and you're walking around carrying this thing. Like, how dumb is that? which I suppose in any other country in the world, including Japan, it is done here as well. But it's kind of funny. I think the reason in Japan that you have all these very accurate looking replica guns is because nobody assumes that you're ever going to have a real gun. You just never see them. People just don't have them. The risk of it actually being real is so low. But that said, apparently in Kobe somebody was convincing enough, and this is, remember, Yakuza town as well, that 30 police got called out and rushed this person with an air gun. So I suppose in America they all would have shot the person as well. So all's well that ends well. Of course, I've never understood the open carry, the concept of open carry in America. Again, it seems insane to me. But doing that in this situation, so that was interesting. And basically, a bunch of people said, "What is wrong with Kobe and what is wrong with people?" And that doesn't seem like a very good idea for a fashion trend. This was also just from the same, 2chan hot topics sort of news of internet commenters getting wound up about stuff. I do not follow anime and I don't really follow manga. I'm not cultured on this stuff, but I'm familiar with the existence of the manga and the spin-off anime One Punch Man. And there's a new character called Black Luster. You can see the pictures here, the images. And the one on the right, this is the manga character, and the anime adaptation looks like this. And immediately you have some comic book blogs and news and a lot of American people saying, "Oh no, Japan's doing it again. They're portraying a black character with a portrayal that looks very much like a minstrel sort of portrayal." I'm not sure if that's the intention or not, but it's people commenting it's racist looking or whatever, again being disrespectful with their portrayal of black characters. That's straight up disrespectful with the portrayal of Black Luster here. The Japanese, I didn't know anything about this at all, by the way, but apparently what some people say, "Oh no, here we go again." Everyone pointing out, well, wait a moment, Black Luster, this character is not black, he's Japanese. He's a Japanese bodybuilder who apparently the backstory is that he became, in fact, I saw the story somewhere, but somehow he became metallic dark or something like that. He's basically a dark-skinned Japanese person. And this also, by the way, reminds me of, one thing about Japanese people is that they can get really dark tans, by the way. Apart from the fact, of course, that there are an increasing number of half Japanese and, African Japanese people. There's people like Kiyohara, for example, as well. There are famous baseball players that are just super, super dark skin. And seriously, if you saw Kiyohara, I've seen tweets mocking the appearance of Kiyohara, like this the Tokyo Giants baseball player, saying that, I've never seen a black Asian person before. And he's not half at all. He's just a really dark skinned and admittedly probably adds to the tanning himself. He's just a really dark tan Japanese person, and yes, he's just really big and kind of muscular looking, and he looks really strong, and people would think on first appearance that he was maybe African. But yes, people talking about the portrayal of Africans, where no, it's a portrayal of a Japanese person with dark skin. So yes, people are getting triggered. We are in that day and age where you have to be careful of this sort of thing, perhaps. I can't really comment to the, and again, the idea that it's in a, well, that's pretty much it. And this is it. I mean, so what do you do? They don't seem happy at the way that the character is being drawn, but it is a depiction of a Japanese character, not an African character, and there's no intention of mocking. The character is a hero character who is Japanese. So obviously it's not intended with any sort of the minstrel or blackface. It just happens to bear similarities, I suppose, to the style. But that's it. I mean, in the end of the day, it's almost like you're lobbying. Well, it's one thing to lobby to just exclude African characters from your art, but to exclude dark-skinned people from Japan in it as well is just kind of weird, and it's born from ignorance in the first place. Although I suppose that there is mutual ignorance. The counter-argument is that nowadays people should be sufficiently aware enough to know that what's going to look like a blackface depiction, which I'm not sure that this does, but some people said, some people are reacting to it. So what can you do anyway? I thought that was interesting. This was another controversy from this week. This Ginza kimono maker said, had a series of posters. So here's a young lady wearing a kimono crossing an intersection, and the caption at the top says, half no ko o umitai kata ni. To all the women out there that want to have a half Japanese baby. I don't know if there's going to be like a horde of aroused Japanese, foreigners beginning to chase her or not. But apparently, yes, if you want to have a half baby, wear this. And obviously, I'm not exactly sure of the logic, but yes, this Ginza shop basically. And they were kind of direct with a few other statements as well. There were a few other versions of this, but there's half no ko mitai koni. There's also nanpa shite kuru hito. Basically, if you want to get have people come and try to pick you up on street corners. I mean, numpered basically, not like a streetwalker per se, but just as a getting numpered. Yeah, they're trying to sell by saying, hey, make you have half babies and have people hit on you more. That's how they're selling kimonos, which is a little bit incongruent with the concept of kimonos, and people generally commenting, yeah, it's a bit low class. But there you go. And Japanese store apologizes for ads saying women who want biracial children should wear kimono. And I'm not sure it's actually good advice. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Thoughts in the comments. Would you, as non-Japanese people, would your future someone, male or female, whatever your thing is? I must say, actually, the Japanese male kimono, the hakama, are actually pretty awesome. I mean, I wore one to my own wedding. Just because I wanted to wear one, you just look like a freaking samurai. It's awesome. They're kind of cool, but you only wear those, literally like women will have more cause to wear kimono. And I don't think that they don't look good, but seriously, I think what a lot of foreigners honestly think is good is not so much a kimono, so much as a yukata, like a festival kind of a thing. Mr. Korichep, too much honesty, but thank you for sharing. Outrage marketing does work well, says Marcin Sebula, so thank you for that. And indeed, the post from, I haven't seen the latest post from Anna, but Anna's had a few of their ones in the past, so there we go. No kimono on the first date is a deal breaker. There we go, Starchy Pancakes, laying it out there pretty clearly, so clearly doubling down on the idea that this advertising approach is accurate. But I think, no, the thing about the kimono is, apart from the fact it takes 2 hours to put on, I mean a proper one, is that it's designed to sort of flatten everything out. It's designed to remove curves or the appearance of bumps or anything like that. It's heavy, it's thick. It's basically like wrapping someone like in a really thick like burrito, like flour bread or something. It's just it actually, I mean, I can appreciate that it is a doll like appearance that happens, but I don't know, yukata by contrast, which the cotton thing that you wear to like the fireworks festivals, yeah, those are cool, right? And those are lighter, they're less fuss to put on and whatnot. But yeah, I don't know. Seriously, I'm not sure that women wearing kimonos are getting swamped by foreigners per se, although we can appreciate it. So I'm not sure that's even accurate. Langley Esquire, Timothy Langley Esquire has got another video out on the European Union mission in Japan. The Mission Japan series that he's doing right now, talking to the ambassadors from each of the different embassies in Tokyo, is actually really, really, really good. I mean, again, he only gets like 30 views on all of his videos, and yet the content is way, way, way above me or what I see anyone else putting out. So I would really suggest, if you're just interested in how your country and the history and the relations of your country, he's got it's literally, you get to have a 30-minute conversation with the ambassador, and not just of your country, but all these other really interesting countries that have really interesting history with Japan. And it's an excellent series, so I can't recommend it enough. Rui Hachimura, I don't really have a lot of the details of this other than just the headlines and the quick stories that I've been reading, but again, Japan has had an NBA player before, and more traditional, ethnically, as far as I could tell, not mixed Japanese, but so they've had a couple of players that have made it into the NBA before, and became big celebrities back in Japan. But yes, this is the first ever Japanese to be picked in the first draft, the NBA draft first round. And what I understand is that, well, he got picked by the Washington Wizards, and they're going to give him the 23 jersey, the Michael Jordan jersey. Not the Bulls, of course. It's the Wizards, but still, it's awesome. So And you know what? Here's how little I know. Well, I know that he's born and raised in Japan, and he went to America for university after. He came through the Japanese basketball system, so all of his coaches and so on were Japanese, and then basically to be able to play high level, to play US college ball, and for the education purpose, he attended Gonzaga University, and right, Yasutaka Okayama, he was selected by the Golden State Warriors in the 8th round, but yes, you've got basically Hachimura. He's like 2 meters 8 centimeters. It's like 6'9" or something, 6'10". I'm not sure exactly what his heritage is. I should probably have known that before I came on here. But point is, I mean, the fact he's a Japanese name implies he has a Japanese father. But yeah, he is like culturally, he's a Japanese guy who's apparently just an enormous basketball talent, and it looks like he's very likely to become a big name in the NBA. Probably what's going to happen is, from a Japan perspective, he's going to become the biggest player in the NBA, even if other people over there haven't heard. But this is where it's always actually really funny. When Ichiro went over to play baseball, it was kind of like, well, I don't know a lot about baseball, so I was kind of like, well, Japanese media is only going to show Major League Baseball like it's all Ichiro. But then I would find out, talking to Americans, it's like, wow, isn't Ichiro amazing? And it turned out that someone like with Ichiro, who was a particularly special player, really did have an impact over there. That was pretty big. It's great to see. It's always I remember it was a joke. It was a Leslie Nielsen joke in some movie. Why are there no Japanese players in the NBA? Well, check it out. This is the new type of Japanese person, and they're playing in the NBA. And I'm really excited to see. I must admit, I've lived in Japan most of my life now. I've got a half Japanese son, so yes, I'm go Team Japan. I find it exciting to see someone who's not just like half Japanese, and it's not the ethnicity per se. Although it's cool to see half Japanese people doing well, it's cool to see these sort of role models coming out. But it's also just cool to see someone who's come through. The pretty rough. I mean, again, when I came to Japan 20 years ago, there was a lot of cynicism. There still is today, that anything good can come out of the Japanese education system. The idea that for sports that people are overcoached. That they're always sort of holding, for creativity is suppressed, and that success of Japanese comes in spite of the Japanese education system, and it causes me a lot of pause that my son is in a regular Japanese school. That you can raise someone as a Japanese person. Hey Marilag, it's good to see you. And Pickles, you guys, I haven't seen your video yet, but thank you for joining, and I will check it out. I saw you picking me with that. Also good to see, by the way, Jack. Good to see you. Oh, and thank you for clarifying that. Japanese mother, and the father is from the Republic of Benin. Okay, so yes, which is a very, very small, but West African, right? Well, so that's interesting. So he has the Japanese name. He took his mother's name. So in any case, to me, it's just kind of cool to know that for all the Japanese, for the half Japanese out there, from all these different sort of backgrounds and all the different ways that they grew up. I mean, of course, you have Naomi Osaka, who was born and lived in Japan for a few years as a child, but pretty much did all of her development outside of Japan. And a lot of people would say, even in tennis circles in Japan, it wasn't strictly racial, saying that she's not the same as the other people in the Japanese tennis team because she didn't come through the Japanese system. Well, here's a person who is, granted, in the college, he's moved into the US college system, but he's basically grown up as a Japanese person, as if a Japanese person went to the US university and was successful. I mean, that's what he is. And from that perspective, the support that he has, and it's the same with Hakeem, Sonny Brown as well, the same sort of deal. You've got someone who's grown up as a fully Japanese person and has gone overseas as a Japanese person and become an amazing athlete. So again, in so many fields, it's really, really cool just to see increasing numbers of people like this out there. And yeah, I mean, sure, it's supporting the home team in my case, but I'm gonna be following him. I think it's just it's awesome how well he's been doing. Nagoya is apparently worried that with the maglev, I was joking in a slightly mean way that with the maglev it'll be possible for people to when people talked about it'll be 40 minutes from Tokyo to Nagoya. I was like, wow, people are going to be able to get out of Nagoya even faster. I was like, are they even going to bother having the train run in both directions, or are they just going to have it go one direction? But it appears that Nagoya is actually worried about exactly what I was joking about. They're worried that with the maglev, it's going to increase the number of people from Nagoya, like moving out of Nagoya, moving to Tokyo. So they're actually willing to pay people who are moving from Tokyo to. If you live in Tokyo right now and you're willing to consider living in Nagoya, they're considering actually sponsoring $9,000, giving you like basically a bonus, like a gift, to anyone willing to move from Tokyo to Nagoya, which says kind of backs up all the negative stereotypes. I joked when I tweeted about this. I said, basically, for understanding, for a frame of reference from an American cultural perspective, I see so many movies making fun of Cleveland in America, and it's just a big city with really nothing to sort of draw attraction to it. Nagoya is a huge city. It's got Toyota behind it. But again, I'm not exactly sure what I've been there a couple of times, but I'm not sure what I would be drawn to do to go and live there compared to Tokyo. So yes, it's basically, imagine if you were getting paid $9,000 to go live in Cleveland from New York. Would it be worth $9,000 to move your entire life? If you were teetering on the decision, it might help. But I couldn't imagine anyone deciding to move their life to Nagoya for $9,000. I mean, I guess it might help in some circumstances. But I don't know. Certainly, I saw a lot of people that said that they would take the $9,000 and move to. Is that per month or year? No, that is just a one-off bonus that they will just pay you for moving there. So, yeah, it's great having the $9,000, but at the end of it, you still it was indeed. You're still going to be in Nagoya. So that is the problem. What is the average salary in Japan? It's surprisingly low, by the way, although I hesitate to add that in most parts of Japan the cost of living is very, very different to Tokyo. Does this apply if you're from the US? Well, so I see people actually interested in this. So the idea of this is, I believe they want Tokyo defectors, so you've got to be living in Tokyo first. Oh no, I can subscribe to I am subscribed to this, but I have to log in. But it's funny, it's literally, the prefecture is trying to woo people away from Tokyo. So they're offering up to 100,000 yen, roughly $10,000. Now it goes on the current exchange rate, $9,300, to woo people away from Tokyo. So I don't know if that'll apply if you're a foreigner or not. I suppose if you're a resident in Tokyo and you can prove it, I would assume that for foreigners as well. I don't know, that's actually an interesting question. I suggest looking it up. So they're offering this thing, it must be Googleable anyway. What is the average salary in Japan? It is $4.14 million. It's $40,000, which is actually quite low. $37,800 at the moment is the average salary in Japan. Now remember, if you cut Tokyo out of the equation, you can live most parts of Japan for like $300 a month rent. Car park or whatever. You can have a reasonably pretty good life. And actually, for English teaching jobs, particularly outside of Tokyo, you can comfortably get more than that amount of money. Just being at a conversation school, and often with accommodation and so on, also subsidized or provided, so you can do pretty well. But here we go, they've actually got by industry average salaries. So for IT communications, 4.6 million. So remember that for US dollars, it's about an 80% sort of discount, and take off a few zeros. So roughly 42,000 for IT communication, 4.1 million internet media advertising. Manufacturing gets paid on average more than IT. That is surprising to me, actually, as does medical, as does finance is not surprising. It is surprising that manufacturing actually gets paid more on the percentage of foreigners in the industry. Only 2.6% in the IT and internet businesses. 5% in services, which is the lowest paid. I guess that includes things like convenience stores and hotels. Manufacturing, though, the largest, 4%, and the highest average income there. So that's interesting. Retail food, I see retail, so that'll be convenience stores, and that is the lowest, and that is also pretty high penetration. IT jobs in Japan offer the highest salaries, especially for women. So it's not the average is not the greatest. Oh, wait a minute, that's 4.6. I misread that. So they do. Certainly, I know that the highest salaries are probably available in IT, although they're very hard to get. And the language issues are pretty big there. But yes, indeed. So, I mean, if you're interested in how much money you can make here, it's not really a place that you come for income anymore. Incomes have just been frozen, whereas I know that in Australia and America, rents and incomes have gone up quite a lot. So Japan is generally falling on the OECD scales of, cost of living and versus income. But yeah, those are the numbers. Those are the current numbers, and those are pretty accurate. But look, when I came to Japan as a new university graduate, I was 22 years old. The first company I joined as an IT consultant, new grad, I think I was getting just under 5 million. So I was probably getting just above the average IT salary as a starting point, which was a good salary. And through my second job as well, I think I was getting like about 5.5 million. So my first 7 years in Japan, I was basically getting probably between about 4.8 and 5.5. So I was a little bit above average for those first few years. But at the same time, the experience I got from those paid off when I went to a foreign company, or foreign law firm, when I was getting paid as an expat. So suddenly the scales all became very different. My housing became covered. That was a nice gig. But yes, I went in. Then I went back into a Japanese company. But by that point, I managed to sort of shift my track. I was working as a legal professional then. So it was better. But yeah, certainly my first few years were pretty representative of coming to Japan as a new immigrant and working in Japanese companies, and I got slightly better than average, and honestly those wages are probably still the same today. And in Tokyo, yeah, it is hard to say. The thing about Tokyo as well is that if you try to save money, if you avoid going out, if you avoid drinking, if you really knuckle down, and this is easy to do in country towns, but I know New Zealand people that did this. They came to Japan, they just locked themselves in their room and just worked. They didn't have any fun, but they saved all the money. They went back to New Zealand and they put a lot of money away, even working for 1 year. But if you want to enjoy the things that Tokyo has to offer, it costs, right? If you want to go out and enjoy the food, if you want to go out drinking, if you want to use a lot of public transport and see lots of places, it's pretty easy to not save anything, even on a pretty good income. And I worked very hard. I didn't have very much fun for my first 2 years when I was paying off my student loan. But when I did pay it off, which is partly because the currency fluctuation happened, where all of a sudden the New Zealand dollar became very cheap, and with a couple of bonus payments, I was able to make a lump sum sort of payment of my pay off my whole student debt while it was like at half the normal value. So it's like I got a huge discount on my student debt, and I paid it all off. I went 2 years where I did nothing, and then when it was paid off, it was like, okay, now I'm going to have all the fun that I missed, that I sacrificed until now. And as soon as I just decided to go out clubbing every weekend and going to concerts every time there's a concert I wanted to go to, yeah, I didn't save any money at all after that. It was actually, I went from saving quite a lot to none. So yeah. Anyway, what else have we got here? Also, this is the event which I should have moved this further up, but this is the event which I spoke at, which was really good. I actually did my own section on do's and don'ts for working with people from other cultures. I made a real point as well of not being too. I made one of the points I made was, don't think that preparing to work with foreigners is preparing to work with Westerners. Particularly nowadays in Japan, it's actually far more relevant to be prepared to work with Chinese and Vietnamese and Indians. And I heard other people talking about things like Indonesians and other countries as well that are coming on the radar now, where in terms of population and in terms of realizing the increasing standards of living and education in a lot of highly populated developing countries, our day is pretty much done as Westerners, as being the where people in Japan would look outward to. That is changing, but yes. So taking that into account as well, I gave my tips over from my time in Japan, my experience. I gave it in Japanese, but I did some slides, bilingual slides, which yes, I'll put out a video about this soon as well, and you'll be able to see that. Many companies are saying skip the office, work from home during the Olympics. It is actually something I know a lot of companies, it sounds really good saying that you'll be able to work from home or work remotely. It sounds good, but some companies actually do it deliberately to save money on overhead, and personally I've actually done working from home, and I'm technically entitled to do it now, but after being in a situation where I was in a company which deliberately did not have enough seats, it forced people to work remotely, and and I'm in a job where it requires talking to people quite a lot. Sometimes I'd go into work and I couldn't find a free seat. I had to work on the floor sometimes, and that sucks. That sucks so much. So being able to go into an office with a fixed desk where I can sit around and turn around and talk to the people that I want to talk to during my day, I've actually rediscovered a value of that from having worked remotely for a long time. The other thing is that in Japan, Japanese companies, even that have remote work, generally aren't comfortable with it because of this whole Japanese culture thing of training apprenticeship, doing apprenticeship type on-the-job training under the supervision of a senpai. So even though some people and companies are considering getting ready for the Olympics by this sort of a way, it's pretty hard to implement in Japan, although yes, I've seen it happen. Not relevant to anything, but this article in the Atlantic on an update on Malaysian Airlines Flight 370, the one that disappeared over the Indian Ocean. and the latest like summary of everything that we know about it and what probably happened. It's an enormous article. It's a huge read. I was not one of the people really into following this extremely closely, but it was. It's an amazing summary, and it actually has pretty clear conclusions on what must have happened, which frankly must have been deliberate, probably by the captain. That's the only conclusion that seems to make sense at this point. They have found the wreckage of the plane. I mean, they found parts of the wreckage of the plane which imply that the plane hit the water at high speed and disintegrated. And small parts of the plane have been washing up in Madagascar and Mozambique. The whole thing, the whole background to it, you put it all together, and it shows a lot of things about the way that the government of Malaysia has been handling it. The understandable frustrations of the families, and it's an incredible thing. I mean, let's face it, we all travel so much and we take it for granted so much now, and these planes are so high tech. You just assume that these planes are like on a air traffic controller screen, and that everything is being tracked by a satellite, and everything is like you have the GPS on the plane. You know when you're flying exactly where you are. You can look at the screen any time. In fact, when the movies are no good, I'll often just put it on that screen by default. So you always just, I think, take for granted that the location of the plane is constantly visible to and being tracked and recorded somewhere all the time. It's kind of disturbing to know in this day and age that planes are often not tracked when they go off the radar screens around the airports, and that this plane did basically what appears to be a suicide, or means thereof, just went into the most remote part of the ocean and the most remote part of the world and did this. It's an amazing account. It's well worth reading just to understand and to understand the improvements that are being made to sort of prevent this sort of thing again. But yes, that's right, Mar-a-Lago. So that's right. So GPS is one aspect of it, but apparently it was the entertainment system. There is a satellite link to the entertainment system, which is how they were able to actually figure out how long the plane was in the air and get a pretty good idea of how far it went and where it most likely went. But yes, so they do have I see. So we have the comments there about the GPS. So yes, indeed, it was deliberately turned off. This is the other part of it. The transponder was turned off, but even then, you just assume it's just impossible nowadays to lose something like that, but it's not. A nice convenience store in Sendai has a bit of a tribute to its foreign workers, who you increasingly see nowadays. I like this, and this is again the sort of thing. Again, it's not just treating people as a labor resource, but actually sharing where these people are from. This particular one, by the way, there's so many people from. Oh, look at that! They've zoomed in on Nepal. So yes, a lot of people from Nepal. I believe that's a map of Nepal there. That's a zoomed in map of Nepal. I was going to say there's so many people from Nepal lately in convenience stores. There's also a lot of Koreans and a lot of Chinese, although they've also got the Mongolian flag there as well. So I guess in this one in Sendai they also have Mongolians. But that's pretty cool, and it's nice of the Tensho that they did that. Dogen, god damn you, Dogen. You know who I mean by Dogen, right? Dogen. He started out like a YouTuber who liked to tricking, kind of like juggling, but sort of athletic tricks. And then he kind of switched over. He's down in Kagoshima, and he switched to doing these. He's learned very, very fluent Japanese, but he's also shared. It's really fascinating to see how he puts his stuff together. He really pathologically prepares his videos like crazy, and he delivers them just spot perfect, and he does these little, they're funny, they're quaint, they're always in the same setting, they're in a room, he's always standing by a mic, he's just sort of doing a kind of low-key sort of stand-up routine, but they're always awesome, and it drives me nuts that he appears to do them so effortlessly. And whenever I see it on my feed, I honestly, full disclosure, I always see when Dogen's got a new video or whatever on Twitter or whatever, I'm like, oh no, not another one. And it feels like, oh man, I don't want to watch this, but I know if I watch it, it's going to be good, but oh man, another one. And I watch it, it's like, damn, that was awesome. And I have to share it with everybody again. Everything this guy does is freaking awesome. And even, look at this. He does a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A 10-word tweet. The Japanese proficiency test isn't proficient at testing Japanese. He's very good at these sorts, coming up with these sorts of things too. This thing got, where is this up to? 697 retweets. But bastard. I mean, this guy, basically he's in the same, Japan resident, Japanese speaking little bubble that I'm in. And we all sort of know each other more or less. It's a little village. And this guy's kind of, he's doing very low key what he does, but he's getting like 700 freaking retweets on and I retweeted it. Damn the guy! I retweeted the guy. So Mr. Cordy Chap, I like Dog M, but I'm like, I like him so. I respect the guy so much. I hate him. It's like, damn, how is this guy so good? It's frustrating. It's like, Dogen is just amazing, and he did this, and so I threw my comment on top of it. So of all the things that I do, if I make the wittiest, most clever thing that I ever say on Twitter, I've got a pretty good Twitter following. I've got like 11,000 Twitter followers. If I say something really clever, I might get, I don't know, 50 retweets or something. Once every couple of weeks, I'll say something very clever, or I'll think of something good, or share something that's just very interesting to a lot of people, and I'll get like 100 likes and maybe 30 retweets. But I commented back on this and I said, yes, this is true, but I hire using N1 because even if it doesn't signify exact proficiency, it does signify that you were so desperate to show that you were proficient that you spent months filling your head with garbage. In fact, I can't even remember what my exact quote was. I said some version of that. I got like 100 retweets. I'm like, but essentially I got these retweets of basically I was jumping on the bandwagon of Dogen there, and Dogen's original tweet was still genius. And it was still way more clever than mine. And this guy, like, his videos are awesome, his tweets are awesome. He just nails every single thing. It's like, damn you, successful, smart, talented person. Which is all my backhanded way of saying, if you don't follow this guy, you have to follow this guy. He is genuinely just amazing. He's amazing in a very downbeat, not obvious way, but he is amazing. And C from Berkeley, you maintain that this is the most underrated channel on the internet. But the thing is, it's part of the trick. He makes it look like it's effortlessly delivered. He puts a lot of work into his stuff, but this is the other thing. There's a lot of people out there who put a lot of work into what they do, and they don't hit. But, he works at it, and he nails it. It's... yes, which is the most amazing thing. I know so many people who put so much work in to still only hit and miss every now and then, but there you go. But yes, how dare you be successful? Get him out of there. That's right. Damn you, Dogen. Everybody follow Dogen. Damn it. Yes, huge respect for that guy. He's just like, damn. He's just every single time he just consistently nails it, like consistently. Okay, moving on. Angry and frustrated at the success of other people and my own failings and inadequacy. Plant-Based Tokyo, this book, so actually Arisha in Tokyo tweeted she did a feature of this book. Apparently she's acquainted with the author and was featuring this on her feed, and yeah, I've got so many friends. Well, there's 2 points about this, by the way. One, of course, if you're a vegetarian coming to Tokyo, you have to be super careful, because actual real vegetarian, like stuff which will be compliant with someone who's ethically vegetarian, Japanese food is basically there aren't these ideas of religious or ethical sort of restraints. The only concept of dietary restriction in Japan is really based on allergies. And if you say that you're allergic to something, people will scramble and check. But if you say I'm an ethical vegetarian, people say, yeah, okay, just have the hamburger then. So sort of like I actually know someone who has a kid in school, and both the mother and the child are vegetarian, and the mother told me that she told the school that he's allergic to meat. It's the only way he could get them to actually pay attention to him being vegetarian or whatever. It's true that if that's what you have to do, and it is. Although there's great vegetable-based food all over Tokyo, to get something that doesn't have any broth or anything that actually willfully excludes anything animal-related, it's really, really difficult. So the first thing is that this book is fantastic for people who are looking for places where vegetarians can go and have vegetarian food. And there's increasing numbers of vegetarians that want to come to Japan. In fact, Japan has awesome vegetable-based food. It's just it's very rare that it actually willfully excludes non-veggie stuff. Like, it's not exclusive. That's the thing. That's the great thing about Japanese food, is that they just take a daikon, And they won't give a shit about making sure it's an ethical daikon. They'll put that daikon, that turnip, the best way they can do the turnip, and maybe it'll be with a dashi that maybe will have a touch of bonito or something in it. And why should they care? But of course it can be tricky if you're a vegetarian, assuming that just looks like a turnip. That it's often got something else. So that's it. First of all, if you're a vegetarian looking for good vegetarian places in Tokyo that you can be a vegetarian, and it's dangerous because you can get caught out very easily. One, the Plant-Based Tokyo book is probably a good idea. But the other thing, which is more important, is that even if you're not vegetarian, if you've ever been to a Japanese supermarket, or more than that, even a Japanese department store, you'll be familiar with the idea that Japanese take their agricultural produce seriously. Now, it'd be pretty hard in a country like New Zealand, which appreciates agricultural produce. The idea of spending like $5 on an apple or $80 on a mango looks ridiculous. But when you see what a $7 apple looks like, or what an $80 mango looks like, they are impressive. And when you eat them, they are absolutely, without fail, good. And so when you have, when Japanese do organic farms, when they decide they're going to raise the best potatoes in the world, they do it. And there are so many restaurants in Tokyo which just specialize on having the best vegetables in the world, and they're really capable of, seriously. It's kind of ridiculous, the efforts that they go to. Like, economically, it wouldn't make sense in any other country, because you'd never, people would say, why would I spend, $10 on an apple that I could buy for 50 cents? And sure, it'll be hit or miss, but it's still an apple. It's not worth 20 times as much. But people in Japan are willing to pay top dollar to get the top stuff. And there are some fantastic restaurants in Tokyo that are vegetable oriented without necessarily even being vegetarian. And yes, you're missing out if you think that again. I never thought that I'd become a fan of eggplant, for example. I am a huge fan of eggplants as I came to Japan. It's just that in Japan they know how to do vegetables. And so this book, The Plant-Based Tokyo, is a book that if you're either a vegetarian or just someone who just appreciates how good vegetables and food can be in Tokyo, this is a guide to where to find the best vegetable-oriented restaurants and food in Tokyo. And it's very, very well done, and it's being promoted by people in the community, and it's very relevant for a lot of people coming to Japan. So highly recommended checking out. Available from Japan, from Amazon. Therefore, I can see 3,400 yen, but maybe worth getting someone. Anyway, it looks like it's a great idea for a book. You might recall that medical university that was rigging the exam, the entrance exams for the Tokyo Medical University against women, because they were so put out by women ending up needing going on maternity leave, for example, when they were working or doing their internships or whatever. And they just decided it was too much trouble having women doctors who would train and then not be available because they had children or whatever. So in order to counteract the inconveniences of women being doctors, the university unilaterally decided to handicap all women applicants to be able to reduce the numbers coming into the university. Outrageous, basically, of course, and it was a huge scandal. They got into a lot of trouble. Now that they've removed all of the handicaps that they were secretly putting on women's exam scores, women are now consistently scoring higher than male applicants. I guess men have had it too easy, and the women have always been working harder to be held back. Actually kind of outrageous, but now that justice comes in, it turns out the women are actually better at the medical school entrance exams than the men who are getting the leg up. So yeah, and this is in a country that has a desperate shortage of doctors. These bloody stuck-up universities and doctors are deliberately cutting down the numbers of more qualified doctors to make it more comfortable for themselves. So that is the thing. This video, I really want to draw attention to this video. Man, how many more stories do I have? Oh my god, there's so many more stories, and we're over time. And okay, I'm going to be quick. This video is amazing. If you speak Japanese or understand Japanese, you should watch it. That is the richest man in Japan. At the time, he was worth $100 billion. He was actually worth, for a time, much more than Jeff Bezos. He remains the richest man in Japan, valued at $30 billion. Masayoshi Son. You can tell by his surname, and people do talk about it every now and then. He's the president of SoftBank Corporation. They talk about how he has Korean heritage and whatever, and that comes up every now and then, that in spite of growing up in Japan with Korean heritage and the discrimination and whatnot, he went to University of America, was very smart. He got a patent on the calculator, got royalties from that, created an investment fund for ITs and companies and startups, which became incredibly successful, and he became the richest person in Japan. And I know Masayoshi Son's story as a rags to riches sort of a story. I've only heard comments every now and then about his background, about his heritage, and knowing that he had humble roots, and knowing that he had, as pretty much all Korean Japanese that I know, have some degree of struggle and complex with over identity issues, just because the society, particularly even today, but even more so in the past, has not always been very welcoming or easy for people from Korean backgrounds. In this talk, he says once every 30 years he will give a talk where he'll actually talk in detail about his childhood, and he did in this talk, and it's nuts. I mean, you listen to this guy. He lived in a Muba. He lived in Saga. I didn't know that he was from Saga. Saga is closest to Korea in the Japanese peninsula. He talked about his Korean grandmother who came to Japan, who raised him, how he hated his Korean family because he blamed them for the discrimination he received for his connection to having Korean heritage, mixed Korean heritage. Of course, he has Japanese heritage as well. They lived, in poverty after World War II. The grandmother raised the family in undeclared lots, basically slums beside the train lines. The number of the block was not even given a block number. It was called a buraku, a discrimination block. He grew up in a freaking buraku, that didn't even have a number on it, in a slum by train lines. He went to America when his father became bedridden, and his elder brother dropped out of halfway through junior high school to work to be able to help pay for the medical fees of the dad. And he sort of was accused of running away to America to get away from all the family problems. And he said it was always actually the desire to save his family, in the same way that his older brother dropped out of junior high school to work and pay for his family that was living in a slum. He did the same thing. He had relatives in America that he went off to go and live with, but he was motivated the entire time without Sergeant Bilko. No, I know what you're doing there, the 4 Yorkshiremen, but you talk about 4 Yorkshiremen. He could join the 4 Yorkshiremen conversation with this, and it's freaking amazing that anybody in this day and age in Japan comes from that sort of a background within Japan. And he talks about it in detail, and he says, it's the first time he's sort of come openly about that, talking in depth about his Korean identity aspect and the struggles that he had associated with it. But on top of that, he, it's just, it's an amazing video. To think that he's gone from that to being the richest person in Japan, and respected, president of one of the biggest, most successful businesses in Japan. It's an amazing video. I highly recommend it to anybody, just to sort of understand the sort of struggles that people can go through. And when you look at people who are successful, in different sort of ways, and the hunger that just drives some people to go a little bit further, it really is an insight into the mind of someone like him, who's been able to just sort of push beyond the sort of limits that maybe normal genteel people have. And you can appreciate that. When you come from a background like that, you just have a different type of motivation. This is the story of Glenn Wood, who used to work at Mitsubishi UFG, and basically he had a child. The child was ill, required medical treatment. He requested paternity leave that he's legally entitled to have upon request, to go and attend to his son, who was born prematurely, I believe, and was in hospital. And the company basically prohibited him from doing so, and then retaliated when he returned to work, and he's taking them to court, suing under the law that entitles people to paternity, and it's literally paternity harassment. He's actually put a great video explaining his case on YouTube, and he's asked for people to come out and show support at the Tokyo District Court on July 5th. Lots of people in the community supporting this and spreading the word about it, and indeed it's ridiculous that he should be punished for going and taking time off work to support his child in hospital. It's pretty petty. It doesn't look good at all for the bank. The fact that they're going to court, he's making a big deal about it. It certainly looks like a cause worth supporting and following, so as what we will do here. Big earthquake this week in Nagoya, in Niigata. Well, actually not even Niigata, it was Yamagata. It was further up the coast, but close to Niigata. I actually felt the quake here in Tokyo. It was very small in Tokyo because it was so far away, but you could tell it was a big quake wherever it occurred, because the magnitude, I learned this during the Great East Japan earthquake, you can tell the magnitude in a way by the duration of the quake. it indicates the amount of energy being released. So although it was a really small quake, it was just like this, it lasted for more than a minute. And I was like, wow, okay, that's actually big. That indicates a lot of energy is being released. And where the epicenter was, it was a very big quake, and it did cause a measure of damage. It was a rokukyo, which is enough to damage well constructed buildings. Yeah, it was basically Akita. Yamagata was the center, and Niigata and Akita on either side of it also were affected by it, but you could feel it all the way in Tokyo. I felt it. Yes, this is again what happens, and you have to remember in Japan. Another petition this week against forcible hair dyeing. Again, even Japanese people, like without any mixed heritage, sometimes just happen to have light brown, have brown hair or whatever, lighter colored hair. And some, not public schools, but certainly a lot of private schools have some rules that all people have to have a appearance. They on hairstyle, on dress code, and everything, and they'll actually mandate that they have to have black hair. And this even got to a ridiculous point, I believe, with a private school in Osaka that even made a foreign exchange student with blonde hair dye their hair black. And the stories of people who, for example, have suffered like scalp damage from being forced to dye their hair and so on. When the whole idea is to discourage people from dyeing their hair brown in the first place, was by making everybody look the same. And this was some of the arguments again that you'd hear in the 90s when I first got to Japan. The argument that if someone has brown hair, other people might be jealous of that person and want to dye their hair brown as well. So they want to make it black so that people don't draw attention to people's hair or become jealous. So the idea was, the mentality behind this rule, where it exists in a lot of places, originally was that it was in order to discourage people from wanting. They were forcing people to dye kids' hair in order to stop them becoming the envy of other people and making them want to dye their hair to look like them. Was the reason that they forced these kids to dye their hair, in order to stop other kids wanting to dye their hair. That's the logic. That's the logic behind the rule, and just the general idea of conformity and and this kind of weird egalitarianism. And by the way, this egalitarianism idea is really weird, and it's not necessarily fascist either. It's in that weird place where you can become so left wing that you become fascist. It's like Stalinism. The teachers' unions and the teachers that believe in this philosophy of forcing everybody to look exactly the same. It sounds authoritarian, and it is, but it's from a left wing authoritarianism, often more than right wing. But when it all comes out, in the end of the day, it kind of comes out the same. There are of course very traditionalist schools as well that are right wing and will impose for the same reasons. But yes, I see distracting comments, but I'm going to focus and finish this up. Somebody mentioned that yes, in Japan and Australia, a Japanese person working in Australia commented that in Japan and Australia they don't have a culture of shouting at people or humiliating them that they have in Japan. And this is a wonderful thing about Australia, that you're not supposed to be able to, if you show emotion, if you berate people in Australia, you'll be looked upon as someone who can't control their emotions, and you will be ostracized and will not be successful in companies. And I think that Japan should learn from this. It's true that in Japan there are terrible people that do shout at people like deliberately, and there are people who strategically do this. I think it's a slightly idealized view of Australia that Australians never do this. Certainly it's probably looked upon badly. Certainly there is an aspect of Japanese culture, this idea that you build people up, you train people through this kind of really harsh, tough love and whatever. But I certainly have encountered in my years, particularly working in IT, Australians that are perfectly capable of being real dicks. I mean, like any country, American, New Zealanders, this person holding out Australia as a country where people never shout or never berate people at work. Are you kidding? Slightly idealized view of Australia, but drawing attention to a point. And by the way, and in terms of having bosses that shout in Japan, in 20 years I've come across it a couple of times, but I wouldn't say it's normal or accepted at all in Japan either. I'd say the case here is overstated, but I thought it was an interesting cross-cultural comparison. It's probably overstates it a little bit of a too idealized version of Australia and a little bit too critical view of Japan. But there you go. Disrupting Japan, it's a great blog with tips on starting a startup and good points of living in Tokyo, coming to grips with the multicultural Japan. Oh man, we're way over time. Look, Brian Ashcraft is a legend. He writes for Kotaku. He's got a really great guide. He lives in Osaka as well, by the way, so he's probably going to have someone who's going to have a critical view of Tokyo, but Tokyo is just awesome, and that's really all that you need to know. And but he's got to look up Kotaku, Brian Ashcroft's article if you want to see the full list. If we had more time for it, I would have covered it today. And this is really good. This is just a special feature in NHK on the challenges that biracial kids have in Japan. Again, I'd love to spend more time on this, and maybe I'll do so next week if there's sufficient time. They've done a really long feature looking at the different experiences of biracial kids, from different ethnic backgrounds in Japan. And this is done by NHK in a way that's, sharing with Japanese people the struggles of Japanese people from mixed backgrounds. So it's good to see attention being paid to it anyway. Again, my view based on my friends and my social connections is that it's probably better now than it was when I was in school and I had friends who left Japan often because they found it so tough. There again, I met the half Japanese that I knew were people who I met in New Zealand, so they inherently were people who had left Japan. And often it seemed pretty proportionate that the more country that they were in, the more rare that they were, the tougher the experience generally. Tokyo is still far from being cosmopolitan, but certainly it's foreigners are not head turning or not, a foreigner, which you still get actually in a lot of parts of Japan nowadays. Butter, yes, thank you. That was actually held for review. That is so funny, Sergeant Bilko. That statement that you just made, that trigger statement that you just made there, was actually held for moderation. So it looks like the Google algorithm knows me well. Those are all the topics for tonight. Sergeant Bilko, is that one of my only a few topics weeks? That's right. This is one of my only a few topics weeks. And look at what's happened. We're 20 minutes over. I'm going to have some sleep. Hope you guys all have an excellent week. Look out for a new season of working with foreigners based on manga in Japanese. It'll be a Japanese series, which I haven't put out stuff in Japanese for a while, so look out for that. Thank you for watching Japan Business Time Reiwa edition. We'll do another series of that as well. Remember, if you've got topics that you would like us, Rochelle and I, to take up for Japan Business Time, we always come up with topics for the new series based on the comments of the last series. So go and look at one of the videos, any one of the videos actually, and just drop a comment in if you have an idea for something that you would like us to include as a topic in the next season. And have a good week, everybody. It's been a long show, didn't get to the music, but this is how it goes. Anyway, always too much to talk about, too many topics, so little time. Have a good week. See you later. Boom. Peace. In stream. Yes, I really want to end streaming.